Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 1200 XL. I'm John.
I'm Atari.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Blue Max. Have you ever wanted to be a World War I fighting ace before?
Who hasn't?
Yeah. Now, tell me about the first time you were in an airplane.
The first time I was ever in an airplane that took off was when I actually flew to Mexico for a work-related thing. But the actual first time that I was in any plane was when I was a kid. I got to go in one and just like tool around at a museum. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I believe it was the Air Force Museum up there in Dayton. Awesome.
It is. You know, I've been there several times now, and it's a hidden gem in Ohio. It really is.
Oh man, you can't beat it. Free, by the way.
Yeah.
And they've got a great room for kids if they can get everything working. It seems like every time I go there, the kids' room's like about half working. But you can stuff your kid up in the planes and stuff.
Yeah.
And you can attempt to get up in there, but you're not gonna. The kid can fit, but an adult.
Fit. Yeah.
How big were these pilots?
They must have been tiny, and you know that's the thing is like people always like Amelia Earhart and stuff. You read her stuff, and she's just like, I was uncomfortable the entire time, all the time. There was no flying in style back then if you were in one of these tiny, tiny planes.
Well, the thing about these things, you're talking about planes, especially if you're talking about Blue Max and the World War I era. Of course, planes were stuck into this out of the blue. No pun intended. Like remember the Wright brothers said, the famous quote in Wings, they thought their airplane would end all war. But you're in something that's a box that's glued together with some kite string and wire. So they were garbage anyway.
There's like ropes and pulleys all around.
And you had to be fairly light. It's not like a big tubby guy. It's like you're going to see, here comes, what was the fat guy, Porkins from Star Wars? That guy's not driving around in a softwood camel.
Was his name really Porkins?
Porkins, that was his name, man. So Porkins isn't shooting down the Blue Max, you know what I mean?
Now, growing up, did you ever feel compelled to pursue, like wanting to be in like a single engine plane, like a small plane?
I've never been in a single engine. I have been in I've been in a smaller passenger plane.
Sure, like a regional.
That's right. And that right there was pretty heady stuff I thought for me. But no, I've never been like, it's not like I've been always wanting to fly or be a pilot. It's funny, I wanted to be an astronaut, but it never occurred to me that I had to learn how to fly a plane to do that.
Most of the astronauts actually pilots, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never wanted to do that either. I don't know. I don't fear flying, but after being inundated in my youth with like countless stories of rock stars going down in flames in small planes.
The one I always think about is the who was the guy, Ozzy Osbourne's guitarist?
Tommy Iommi?
No. The guy that did Crazy Train. His name is slipping through my brain here, but I believe he died in some kind of. I believe he died in a wacky plane crash where they were screwing with the tour bus and they ran the plane into a house.
My God!
Some crazy crap like that. Or what about like?
And of course, there's the Skinner guys.
Or like
Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
Jim Croce. John Denver.
What about that? Wasn't the Big Bopper was in one?
He was in there with Buddy Holly.
Who was the guy who also was
Richie
Valens? The other guy was in there. Or Stevie Ray Vaughan. Didn't he die in some kind of crazy plane wreck?
Yeah. So,
gosh, this sounds horrible.
Not too many people dying in bizarre gardening accidents.
Randy Rhodes. Thank you.
Randy Rhodes. Thank you, chat. So no, I never wanted to do it. I wanted to do all of my flying on the old Atari.
The funny thing is, because let's go back from like last year, you were obsessed with boating.
Right.
All right. Now, I'd wonder which is safer, boating or flying, because you always hear flying's like safer than driving in a car. I've heard that a million times. I bet my bottom dollar that flying is probably safer than being in a boat.
Well, the difference is that boating is inextricably linked with alcohol consumption. Okay, most of the people that die in boats are drunk out of their minds.
The way I see it is like you can link alcohol to both. You want to.
But there's just not too many people saying, I'm going to get liquored up and go fly my plane.
I think, that explains the rock star part of it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So let's talk a little bit about Blue Max. Blue Max was released in 1983. This was one of the last peak years of the Atari 8-bit. This was released on the Atari 8-bit, the C64, and the ZX Spectrum. Were you aware that this thing got a Speccy port?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was researching our game this week on the Specky, I came across the title of this, and I was like, wait a cotton picking minute here. They've got Blue Max for the Spectrum. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because, again, most of the ones I played it mostly on the Atari some on the C64, but I had no idea that they'd release one for the spec kit. I'm anxious to give it a shot.
I can't wait to check that out. This thing was coded by a guy named Bob Polin. It was the work of one man. It was a one-man show.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's when you've got full control.
That's right. That's right. And Bob, he had sort of a small career in gaming. I think he was only around for a couple of years before he decided to leave the industry. And no one is sure what he's doing now. It just says, what I found on the net was that he's now retired.
You're kidding me. So this guy just fell off the planet?
He did 2001.
Okay.
Blue Max 2001.
I hated that.
Not a very good
No, I didn't like that at all.
He did a game called Maxtermind. I haven't heard of that. And also Puzzle Panic.
Nope.
And these were all released on the Atari 8-bits and the C64.
I'd forgotten about the sequel to this because I was appalled when I played that.
It's not a very good game at all. This was published by Synapse.
Yeah.
Okay. Synapse is probably the biggest publisher of Atari 8-bit games, third-party publisher of Atari 8-bit games.
Really?
They published around 50 games for the system, but they actually started out as a database software publisher. Okay, so they started out with that, but then when they got into the games, they're like, "Hey, there's a lot of money to be made in games."
You got that right.
Now, where they differ from a lot of Atari 8-bit publishers is actually 65% of their sales came from the C64. Actually, maybe that's not so different from most Atari publishers because once the C64 came out, the sales of that thing just dwarfed everything else.
What do you think had more consumer use and that non-gaming functionality? Which one got used more in a business capacity, the C64 or the Atari?
Oh, I guarantee you the Atari 8-bit did, because when it came out in 1978, first of all, the C64 didn't exist, and the IBM PC didn't exist.
Okay, let me. I think you're right, but let me follow that question up with an addendum. Which got more business use after the C64 was released? Do you think the C64 got more business use, or did the Atari? Because at that point, the Atari was getting long in the tooth there.
Yeah, I'd say it's a tough call. I would say they both got not very much.
Did you use the Atari for any non-gaming purposes back in the day?
Absolutely. I used this thing to type papers on at school. I had an old daisy wheel printer that would print.
So you used they had these at the school?
No. I mean, my 1200 XL at home.
Well, when I went to middle school at Hurricane, they had 800. They had Atari 400s and 800s.
We still had the 800s in the lab. I only took the class. It was basically shop was the class that they shoehorned this into. And
how bizarre, eh?
I remember bringing a coding book from home. And I flipped right to the back and I started typing in a real complex program. The teacher came over and he's like, "How are you doing that?" And I was just like, I just pointed to the brain.
It's funny. When I was in computer class in high school, the teacher didn't know anything about computers. And so I was far and away the wisest computer geek in the whole room. So I effectively taught the class for a while. And I certainly taught people how to do stuff like load games or look at pictures and stuff like that. So yeah, I understand it's funny. It was a whole different era, and then because none of the teachers really had that much experience with computers.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, Synapse published a bunch of great games, including some of my favorite titles: Seamus 1 and 2.
Yeah. I've not played those. I know. I've heard of them.
Great games. A game called Quasimodo.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Zeppelin.
That's a good one. Yeah, I love that.
And both of our favorites, Alley Cat.
Yes, excellent. Did they publish that across all platforms? You figure?
Yeah. And so now, what caused the downfall of Synapse? Well, it goes right in with what you were just talking about. They decided that they'd had enough of games and they were going to go all in with productivity software. Okay.
Yeah.
So this happened in around 83, 84, that time period. And what happened was they struck a deal with Atari. They said, okay, we are going to make a suite of productivity apps. And Atari says, okay, we'll bundle them with the computers. Okay, you print them all up. You print all the discs, send them to us. We'll pay them for you. Yeah. And we'll bundle these as like a business pack. Okay. Well, somewhere in the middle of that deal, after they'd already printed all the discs, Jack bought Atari. And Jack was like, "Yeah, all those discs, you can just keep them. We're not interested anymore." Shuttered the whole deal. And
he didn't do anyone any favors anywhere you went there in that middle of that area.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So that was the end of Synapse. They were bought by Broderbund. Yeah. Yeah, another big name.
Yeah, and, big.
And then they closed down the Synapse studio, such as it was.
That's a crummy way to go out.
Yeah. After that.
Yeah, that's a bummer, man.
Yeah. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about what Blue Max is. Okay, so Blue Max is a World War I setting pilot game, plane game.
Yeah.
It's a 3/4 over the bird's eye view, sort of Zaxxon perspective, I guess I would call it.
This game, when I think of this game, to me, this is the game that combined the Zaxxon perspective with like a Xevious level of bombing and shooting. Now, of course, it's more simulatory than Xevious and less arcadey.
Right.
But it actually, I only say that because it just happens those two games have the same sort of things in common. But really, this game is its own game. I don't really think it certainly didn't rip any other games off.
This reminds me of Xevious just because it's set over green fields.
That's right, and it's in cities and stuff. Yeah.
And the story behind this, there's actually a pretty developed backstory. You are Max Chatsworth. Okay, you are a fighter pilot that goes out on a recon mission with your squadron, and your squadron immediately gets ambushed. Okay, and in this battle, you take down 7 enemy planes all by yourself. And then the next week you go back out and you take down 13 more.
Wow, that would be unheard of in the actual war. Because I believe taking down, I think if you took down 5 planes, something like that, you were considered an ace. It was not very many. I remember that.
No.
Yeah.
And so the Germans actually they nicknamed this guy. They said if you take down Max, we will award you the prestigious Blue Max Award, which was in fact a real award.
Yeah.
And so Max acquired the name Blue Max because of this. Okay? Of course, Max Chatsworth, entirely fictional, not based on any real commander, but that's the backstory of the game.
That's pretty good. I didn't know any of that. In fact, I didn't know you were the Blue Max.
That's right.
I thought the guys you were shooting were the Blue Max because they have a flashing blue plane that comes around.
So what you do in this game is you take off from the runway.
If possible.
And you kind of traverse over the scenery. The scenery includes fields and a river and some bridges. And your job,
towns.
And your job is to take out basically all the targets. There are no friendlies in Blue Max.
No.
There are only enemies. And your targets are you've got bridges that you can bomb. So you have both a gun and bombs in your plane. You can take down tanks that are sort of stationary outside buildings. You can take down the buildings themselves.
Yeah.
There are boats on the river. There are also cars on the road.
Yeah, that's the best thing to do is blow up a bridge as a truck's going across.
Oh yeah, you really feel good.
That's the best, and it's a little touch that is great. The thing about the gameplay in this, they did a good job. Of course, you've got your Atari joystick. You've got the one button, so you've got to use that thing to shoot and to bomb. And that can be a problem in a lot of games. But in this game, I don't think I ever really had to run into maybe occasionally you might accidentally drop a bomb. But generally, it's easy to keep the shooting and the bombing.
Separate.
And on top of everything else, your altitude, you've got the ability to change your altitude. And so it gives you it's a lot of control for one joystick or one button.
Absolutely. And the way that this works is there is no you fly at a constant speed.
Yeah.
The constant is your speed. You can vary everything else. And so because you don't have to constantly push forward or push the button to gain or lose speed, that opens up all the different control possibilities.
Yeah. And really that was the right choice. Because you don't need this is not the kind of game where you need to slow down or speed up. This is exactly the way you need to do it. Now your enemies will come pretty much at the same speed as well, but they're faster, but they'll come towards you and go away. But it's not like you need to, there's not enough real estate to where you need to have a game aspect where you can catch up or anything.
Exactly.
They did the perfect job on this. The fellow was smart. All you need to do is use your joystick for elevation. I mean, you can even get to the point where you're so low you can hit the buildings and the trees. So you've got to be careful. But of course, part of this is you have to manually take off and land. So you have to be able to have the ability to go all the way to the ground.
Oh yeah,
if you want to.
Absolutely. Now you can control your position on the screen by pushing up and to the left and down and to the right. So you do have some freedom there. But by and large, you are just basically continuing straight forward. And like you said, you would think that targets on the ground can only be bombed. But no, you can fly low in this game. You can barnstorm, and you can cut down rows and rows of tanks and vehicles with your gun.
But it's very dangerous.
Yes, you're playing a dangerous game doing that.
And something else you've got to be, I mean, aside from the fact you could hit a building, you could hit a tree, you could hit a tank, you could hit anything. You also, when you play a game where you're that low, you're much more open to being shot.
Right.
And another thing this game did brilliantly was it's not one shot and you're done, or you have a life bar. What you've got here is the ability to take damage, and it adds layers of enjoyment to the game, because occasionally your guns will be taken out, or your bombs will be gone, or even your landing gear will be taken out. So you're pretty much boned. So you're just going to do the best you can with what you've got.
So when you get shot, it's not like you have a health bar, and it's not a one-hit kill game. When you get shot, a little letter appears at the bottom of the screen, and it will either say G or B or S or G. And like you said, your guns can be taken out, your bombing ability can be curtailed.
Yeah.
If your fuel tank gets damaged, then you're going to lose fuel really quick. And the only way that you can repair these is by landing again. And whenever you're landing, your fuel gets refueled, your damage gets repaired, but there are planes flying overhead that are waiting to bomb you while that's going down.
Yeah, you could get bombed while refueling. I mean, there's, which you also, of course, have to take on fuel. Something else this game does well, and this was done in Zaxxon. It's funny how they approach these. It's hard to understand your elevation in the game fully. And so it's hard to match your elevation up with an enemy pilot. And what the game does is when you're on the same, let's say, plane or elevation or as the enemy, the bottom of the screen will change color.
It'll flash blue, yeah.
And that means, okay, I can shoot this guy and he can shoot me. Mm-hmm. Zaxxon did it by putting little X's in front of the bag up.
Not nearly as effective.
Well, this is a much more subtle way to do it.
Yeah.
And I like it. Another thing this game does is give you audible clues. Like, for example, when a runway's coming up, there's a little chime that comes down. And this game, really, the first thing you need to master in this game, sort of like Rocket Ranger, is that you have to master. And of course, this is a lot easier than Rocket Ranger. But I mean, I've seen countless people get killed trying to take off and land. It's not mega hard once you've done it, but even an experienced, seasoned person like us can promptly go out and look like an idiot.
Oh yeah. And at the beginning of this game, you do have options where you can set up what's known as normal control or reverse control. However, that is not really explained to you what that is.
And that's the first thing you need to do is to put it on reverse control.
Right, because you need to pull up to go up.
Otherwise, you push up to go up, and it's much goofier.
Yeah.
It's funny that's the default. It always struck me as strange, but as far as I know, it's the default on every version. I haven't played the Speccy, but on the C64, it was the same thing. This game is immense. It seems like you fly forever when you play it. And this one thing I really like about it is the scenery changes a lot. I mean, you'll be in empty fields. You'll be in a place where the river is like prevalent, and you're also places where you can bomb enemy airfields. There are a lot of different things to do, and it makes the game feel large.
Yeah.
And you can play this game for a long time. And I don't know if there's I guess there's no way to end the game.
Well, there is an ending of this game.
I've never done it.
This game was the first instance where I thought that I discovered something hidden. And I mean, it is sort of hidden, but in this game, if you basically take off and land and don't do anything special, we're coming up, if you're watching the video version of this game, we're coming up on the end of the game.
They're going to the huge city right here.
You will continuously just be flying over a river. Yeah. But if you fuel up and you take off and you push up and to the left on the screen and you really hug that side, you will leave the river area and go to a city. And the first time that this happened to me, of course, I was a little kid, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is like, no one's ever been here before. Yeah. I'm discovering part of the world that has never been seen. Yeah. And it's super cool because it's a totally different feeling. There are tons of cars you can bomb. The enemy planes are lined up on the railway, on the airstrip.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing.
It is. It catches you off guard too because the buildings are immense.
Right.
And you've not used to that, seeing much smaller buildings.
Right. Now, when you meet a certain series of criteria, which I'm not exactly sure what it is, you will actually fly through an even bigger city with a special building in the middle. And if you bomb that building and then land, that will end the game, and you will have the opportunity to get the top rank. That's another thing that this game is unique. You actually get not only a ranking, but you get a class. So you start out, I think the lowest class is Kamikaze Trainee.
Yeah.
And that is, I got that a lot when I was trying to take off. And then you move up through Runway Sweeper and Air Cadet, but there's also a class. So I think there's 1 through 4. Number 1 is the best, obviously. And so if you can get Blue Max Class 1, then that's the best you can possibly do.
I've never gotten that.
Me neither. So,
by the way, if you're watching the video, he just finished the game.
Yeah.
That's great. I've never seen that before.
So there are another option that you can use that I always played with when I was a kid because I thought it made the game more real, but it made the game a lot more hard, is you can turn on gravity.
Yeah.
And that makes it almost impossible to strafe the ground.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly going down and you can't self-correct fast enough.
Now, it's off by default, and I never fool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does it, and I don't need the extra difficulty. I'm not that good.
Now, do you remember the first time that you played Blue Max?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was my neighbors had an Atari 400 or 800. They had a bunch, had 2 or 3. And they loaded this up for me one time, and I was just like, this is the game. I mean, I just loved it. And we used to play this game all the time. We played it at least every week. We'd play it 2 or 3 times that week amongst the games we played. It was perennially all of our favorites, and so it got played a lot. And so that's where I learned to play it. It's funny, I never played the C64 version until, maybe 6-7 years ago. And I played it, and it is very similar. I mean, I prefer the Atari version, but it's probably because that's the one I got used to. But I just think it sounds better and looks better.
Well, I think that the sprite, your plain sprite itself on the C64 looks better. But I think that the explosion, there's nothing like the explosion sound of the Atari.
Yeah.
I mean, it is visceral.
Yeah, like I said, it's one of those things where you get used to it, but I played this almost exclusively on the Atari.
Yeah.
And of course this is one of the games that got released as a cartridge for the
This saw release on all 3 formats. I think it was originally released as a cassette and a disc, and then when the XEGS came out, it was released as a cartridge.
There it is.
Yeah, and so I actually purchased this new in box, but you can still buy these from Best Electronics over in California. I think it's about $35, brand new, still in the shrink.
It looks good too.
Yeah, the cart is not actually in there. It's in my box of Atari carts, but yeah, it's a good looking game. Aaron, this game got a couple reviews that I could find online. Electronic Fun in 1984 gave it a 4 out of 4. And Atari User didn't give it a numerical score, but it gave it a positive review, an 88, and I'm guessing that coincided with the release of the XEGS.
I'd say you're probably right, yeah.
Yeah. I looked this thing up on eBay. You can pick up the tape for $10 loose.
Yeah.
I couldn't find any boxed copies of the disc. I did find a copy of the disc with the manual just by itself for $20. You can get the loose cart for around $15, so pretty affordable.
You didn't find any box carts for it?
You can still buy the box cart new from Best Electronics for $35.
You know, where do you? I know we're both big fans, obviously. Where do you put this in your pantheon of classic games or games in general, or Atari games, however you want to do it?
Oh, this is near the top on all those.
Yeah.
This is one of the first games. Whenever I take the 1200 XL off the shelf, this is one of the first games that I fire up.
Yeah.
It is playable to this day. It offers just the right amount of challenge and variety to keep me interested. I love the way that you can shoot planes out of the sky. You really feel like you've done something cool when you do that. The game runs very smoothly.
Yeah.
This is a winner for me for sure.
I agree. I mean, this is one of my all-time favorite games on any system. I mean, and I was heartbroken when I learned that they did not make an Amiga version of this, because we both thought I saw an ad for it, and it's not the same.
There were sequels for Blue Max. Blue Max 2001 set in the far off future of 2001.
Yeah.
And it is really terrible. It scrolls in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It scrolls up and to the left. And the game gives you completely free movement. It gives you free scrolling, but it's just not very good.
I put it up there with the Time Pilot sequel. Mm-hmm. There are these games where you have a winner, and then they try to do some kind of futuristic crap, and it sucks. This was another one. big. I mean, stick to the original. And that really, there was not a whole lot they could improve on this. This is one of those games I've often wondered why we haven't seen someone make a more modern effort on it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, much like they did with Wings, where they really cleaned it up and modernized the graphics and made it real pretty. You could easily do that with this game and keep the core gameplay intact, and it would be. I mean, you wouldn't have to make any changes.
Now, of course, the less said about the 16-bit versions of this game, the better. The Amiga Blue Max and the Atari
Not the same.
Blue Max. It's
Yeah.
a totally different
game. Yeah.
Yeah, and not very good.
Yeah, but this is the winner. Like in terms of Atari, this is right up there for me with like your Jumpmans and your Miner 24/9s. I mean, at the tippity top. In fact, probably better than both those. I really love this game.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for episode 1 of 1200 XL. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. This is sort of the format. So if you like it, that's great. If you don't, I understand. But it's a very talkative, conversational podcast where we just talk about what we think about the game and give you a little bit of background. But if you want to get in touch with us, you can tweet at me at Amigos Retro, or you can just leave a comment on the YouTube video, whatever you want to do. You can even leave us a voicemail on Anchor. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, anchor.fm/1200XL. That would be cool. And we will be back next time with another episode of 1200XL. Until then, see you later.
Bye-bye.